Good morning, and welcome to day 3 of 365 Days of Stories by Theo Mayer. Grab all, lose all. Once in the land of India, there was a farmer with a family who had a beautiful piece of land very close to a beautiful river. He had purchased the land from a very wealthy man that lived and basically ruled over the village close to where this land was. He was, somewhat of a politician, the man who had sold the land to the farmer, and was constantly attempting as best he could to increase his wealth and the amount of money and possessions that he had. The farmer had come to him in sincerity, asking for a fertile piece of land from which he could grow enough food to supply for all the needs of his family and also to make a living from the food that he could sell. Things went well for many years. The farmer at this point had 3 beautiful growing children, and his wife helped him out in the fields on most of the days, as did his eldest son. But as things happen, there was a drought in that country, and for a couple of years, rain barely came. The farmer grew somewhat distraught, wondering how he would be able to continue. And one day, it was a day like any other, really. He became especially concerned. He was overwhelmed with the feeling that things weren't going to work out. And overwhelmed by that feeling, he sought refuge after the evening meal by going to this beautiful tree that grew next to the banks of the river. Its trunk bent in such a way that it was easy to sit upon it, and the trunk, it curved out over the water, and then the branches came up. And basically, the whole tree was growing over the water, though the roots were on the land. So the farmer climbed up in that tree. Now, it happened that that night was a full moon, and the farmer especially loved being out in the light of the moon. He found that he looked at the world differently then, that he could see the way plants grew in a different way. He could see the landscape in a different way, and his thoughts were inspired in a different way by being out in the light of the moon. So he sat hoping that some good would come to him, some inspiring thoughts that could motivate him to continue and find a way to continue to pay the monthly fee that he needed to in order to keep the farm, the land that he was dependent on. I should tell you that because of the drought, the farmer had gone through all of his savings, paying each month the fee that he owed to the man that still held claim to the land that he was purchasing. A couple of weeks before, the very wealthy man came to him, but not alone. The wealthy man always had a couple of men to watch over him to make sure that nothing bad happened to him. Strong arms, we would call them. And so these three men had come to the farmer in the early morning, just as he was getting ready to go out and do what he could in the meager crops that he had. And they let him know without any uncertainty that if he was unable to pay the monthly fee in the next month, that the rich man would begin proceedings to reclaim the land and leave the farmer with nothing. That had not sat well with him or his family, you can be certain. So the farmer was thinking about all of this as he sat there. And as he did, he'd been there for a couple of hours, really. And as he did, the tree began to shake and tremble. And the farmer didn't know really what to do except to grab onto the tree. He thought that there must be an earthquake happening. And so he held on to the tree. And as he did, the tree rose up into the air, away from the banks of the river. The farmer's eyes opened wide in astonishment as the tree gained elevation and began to travel over the landscape. First, he was afraid, but then he began to enjoy this new view of life and of the earth. And in the moonlight, everything looked simply beautiful. The tree was far, far above the ground, perhaps, as we would know it, half a mile or so off the ground. And as it traveled across the ground, he could look down and see little fires where people were sitting around it in the moonlight. And he could see where the roads were and the little villages. But the tree was traveling quite quickly. And after some time, it began to descend toward the earth again. Lower and lower it came until it landed on a beach. The gentle ocean was lapping the banks. The farmer looked around. He didn't recognize the landscape at all, but he did notice that the sands glittered in a way that he had never seen before on a beach. He was afraid what might happen next. The tree might just leave the ground again. He did not want to be left behind because he didn't have any idea where he was. So he took his turban and he unwrapped it from off of his head, and he tied one end of it to a branch, and holding on to the other, he climbed out of the tree and looked more closely at these things that were glittering in the sand and realized that they were beautiful gems and jewels. And he began to pick them up one by one. A ruby here, a diamond there, an emerald, sapphire. One after another, he picked these beautiful stones up and soon had within his hand many of these stones. He looked at them and realized it was a great fortune of wealth. If you were to sell these stones, it was so much. And so he held them in his hand. He climbed back up in the tree. He put them in a wrap of his turban, wrapped his turban back up over his head, and hoped and prayed that he might some way find his way home again. And sure enough, the tree began to tremble and shake, and up into the air it went. And now, enjoying the view more than ever, feeling a lightness in his heart like he'd not felt for a long time, he was carried back over the landscape to where the tree settled back down on that riverbank. He quickly got out of the tree. Now, hours had passed, and made his way along the trail to the house. And when he got there, his wife was still up and distraught. Where have you been? Where could have you gone? It's late. You've been gone for hours. Where have you been? Now, the farmer had hoped not to share this new gained wealth with anyone because he was concerned what might happen if people found out that he had a handful of incredible gems. But he saw that there was no way around it, so he told his wife everything that had happened, and he actually got the gems out and laid them on the table. She looked at them in disbelief. At first, she thought that perhaps he had taken them, because who has ever heard of a tree that lifted off the ground before? But trusting her husband as she did, she took his story as true. Now, I would tell you, things changed completely. The farmer took a stone into the village and sold it at the jeweler's. The jeweler was impressed by the gem, of course, but being the small little town that it was, the jeweler talked a little bit, and soon word got out to the wealthy man that had sold the property to the farmer, that the farmer had somehow come across a beautiful gem. And how else could have it happened, really, than probably he stole it from somebody. Maybe he had the good luck to have found it, but this is very, very odd. Well, the wealthy man and his strong men felt that they needed to take a visit to the farmer. And tomorrow, I will tell you what happens next. Have a good day.